Hi, this is James George. You know, this housing thing, I'm just a common everyday guy. I don't know much. I didn't know what was going on. I had to learn the terminology of all these academics and these people with these, what I call degrees that are business administration. I mean, my dad was an engineer, my brother's an aeronautic engineer, my other brother's a computer programmer, my sister was a CPA, ran HUD in LA. I have a sister who's a nurse. I like construction. I don't really like all the numbers and the terminology, and if I took you out with me and we worked, you wouldn't understand what I was saying to you. So bear with me. It took me a little while to learn what shadow inventory was, what derivatives were, which really I think is an expansion of regular stocks, securities, things like that. And my understanding was kind of simple, but I just looked for numbers and I said, what happened here? Because I wanted to understand how housing went down so far and what really happened, and I was puzzled. So I looked into this and I went to statistical abstract, and then I started saying, you know, when you start looking at stats, and I drew up my own little graph, and I hope you can read it, but you can find these stats in statistical abstract, and you can see that big line going up. Well, that was outside the norm of normal buyers for homes in America. And if you think back and you were listening, when we got into Afghanistan and then we went back into Iraq, they said, how do we finance two wars? Well, one of the things you need at a bank if you want to borrow money is securities. And how do you create securities? Well, if you build a bunch of houses, you can have securities. And then you had hedge funds. I was going, what the heck is a hedge fund? Well, a hedge fund is, we know this isn't a really good investment, but the house is a security because it has value. It's better than the land just sitting on the land. So, yeah, it has real attainable value. The other thing you can look at is when you build a house, 10 years later, normally the house goes up, you know, almost double in value. So you're thinking my securities there are going to be worth twice as much. Well, if you look what happened, the government people said, we want to give poor people a house. We want them to have a house, but we don't want them to attain the virtue and the character required in putting the down payment down, which is kind of silly. But the builders were saying we need securities to finance these wars, so we'll go ahead and do this for you. The problem was they lost a bunch of money and they don't know how they did it because they're all brainless. The truth is, if you come here, and you, in Sacramento in particular, I was working on the San Rafael Bridge down in the Bay Area, 610s, 4 years straight, and by the time I come back here, 20 miles north of here, there was houses everywhere. Well, it came to dawn on me that here with this big spike in house buyers, and I mean a huge spike, they almost doubled the norm. They went from an average of 600,000 new home buyers a year to 1.2 million. That is double the normal rate. Now, where did they get these people? They got these people that were hardworking, had fathers and sons living in the same home, things like this. But the problem was when they entered the market, many of these people were inexperienced buyers, and they doubled the value of the homes, or they doubled the price on the home. They started bidding wars. And so Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac, they have, you know, they say $5 trillion of mortgages. They're only worth $2.75 trillion because all these people skyrocketed the price when it wasn't realistic. Maybe 20 years from now, maybe if they rebuild the infrastructure and put qualified buyers back in the market earning decent livings to where they could buy these houses, you know, you could buy them, but you can't do it now because they're wasting the money. And now the women in government are saying our pension is gone. They bought the securities. Didn't you hear Lloyd Feinstein from Goldman Sachs say, I returned the securities to their originator? That's all you have to know. It's like poetic justice. They forced us to sell to underqualified buyers, and I gave them their pensions in these houses of these people who were going to default on their loans. And these loans were double of what the house values are really worth. So here you are, the teachers union, the government sector union. You don't want to pay your fair share of medical. You don't want to add to your pension out of your salary. You don't want to be a team player like the rest of the private sector unions. And you wonder why they're handing you back the securities that are valueless. And then you don't do your due diligence and look into what you're purchasing for your pensions. And now you want the taxpayers to come in and refinance your whole gig. That's why you stole the infrastructure money and put it in investments out of the country, such as Russia's offshore drilling rig in the Antarctic. You guys are a real piece of work. That's all I can say about you women in government. And it's the same thing with welfare. 70% of your budget goes to your employees. Only 30% goes to the poor. That's pathetic. This is James George. You created the house crisis. Why don't you take responsibility for it?